Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Armchair Traveler series. First of all, I want to thank Cindy Buxton and Russ Wright for arranging these talks. They've been doing a great job putting them all together. I'd like to ask everybody online to please turn off their videos and stay muted during the presentation. That helps out with the bandwidth here. And then at the end, we'll do a question and answer session, and you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions when we get there. So previously on the Armchair Traveler series, we had Jeff Moskowitz describing a series of ski tours that he did in Arctic Norway. And then also Dennis Geeson and Deb Marshall highlighted the art and culture of Mexico City. So if you missed those two talks, they're both archived on the library website, and you can watch them at any time. And then after tonight's presentation, we are going to take a midwinter break and return on March 27th, going through on Wednesdays till April 17th for a few more talks featuring George Figdor, Brian Weed, and John Svensson. And you can keep updated on the library website when we have more information about exactly what those talks will be presenting. But for tonight, I'm very excited to announce that we have Mori Hayes and Julia Murph describing their about 12,000-mile bicycle tour from Alaska to Argentina. Everybody in Haines, you should check out the most recent issue of the Chilkat Valley News, which has a great article describing Mori and Julia's trip. So Julia is originally from Petersburg, Alaska. She has a strong connection to her hometown, having grown up camping with her family and attending Petersburg school. After high school, she pursued a degree in electrical engineering in Fairbanks, where she crossed paths with Mori. Julia has a passion for baking, dancing, and embracing spontaneity in her life. And then a lot of you I know Mori. Mori moved to Haines from Japan at a very young age. Growing up in Haines, he developed a love for biking, particular after his family's bike trip along the Golden Circle from Haines to Skagway through the Yukon. Mori has taken a keen interest in problem solving and design. He likes well thought out plans and a more meticulous approach to life, which complements Julia's spontaneous spirit well. So I'm very excited to have the two of you here. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Yeah, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Mori. I think I know a lot of you guys, but for those who don't, and this is Julia, and we're going to talk about our trip cycling across the Americas. The format is going to be, so we're going to have 8 different sections and then have 3 slides with mostly photos for each section. And we're going to trade back and forth talking about just stories and photos about the trip, which is what we thought would really be most interesting to everybody. So yeah, Julia's going to start off talking about Alaska.
Yeah, so we started in Alaska. We both went to school in Fairbanks. And so when the time came, our friends drove us north. And so we went from Dead Horse or Prudhoe Bay at the very top, all the way down to Anchorage. It was about 1,000 miles, and it took us 4 weeks. And so in the beginning, the thing that really strikes me, it was a 17-hour drive that our friends took us on, and we just loaded up our friend's little car. We put both of our bikes on the back and crammed all of our stuff into the seat and kind of squished in there. And when we got there, it was near sunset. And the weird thing is, like, I don't know how many of you have been to Dead Horse, but it's like very featureless. It's just kind of totally flat. And it looks like an overgrown construction site. There's just, everyone's kind of living in trailers. Like it's really something. And the sun up there takes forever to set because we're so far north and it's still close to the summer. And so I don't know, I just have this strong memory of the fear up there. You know, we'd driven all that way and it was just kind of like, what are we doing here? We're supposed to drive back. But the next morning we got up and we cooked our breakfast over a camp stove for the first time and burned it, which we had a learning curve there trying to figure out how to use our camp stove. And we went to the sort of iconic sign, the Prudhoe Bay sign here. And after taking a picture, we set off. And was about 33 degrees and raining when we started. So it was really nasty weather. You can tell we're totally geared up. But it was quite a start to the trip for us.
So on this section from Fruitaberry to Fairbanks, we learned a lot, and we had a lot of mechanical issues. We broke both of our back racks on our bikes, and luckily, when Julia's broke, we were right outside of a mechanic shop of this guy named Neil, and yeah, we didn't know anything about him or his shop at the time, but we thought, oh, maybe he could help us, and so we went and knocked on his door, and luckily he was really friendly, and so we spent the next couple hours kind of machining some little splints on his grinder and zip tying and duct taping her rack back together, and that was able to get us back to Fairbanks. And then a few days later, we got to the welcome to the Dalton Highway sign, which yeah, we were really glad to finish that section. It was really rainy. It rained almost every day, and we went to bed with wet feet most nights, wet clothes, and just kind of tried to dry off as best we could during the night. But on the rare days it was sunny, we got a few nice photos, so you can see those here.
So the last chunk in Alaska was from Fairbanks to Anchorage, and this is about another 500 mile bit. But it was really beautiful. It was still wet and rainy, but the fall colors were coming out, and it was nice because we got to see our friends in Fairbanks, and then we were looking forward to meeting my brother in Anchorage. But one thing that stands out from this section is we'd both gotten a little sick, and a couple days before we were due to arrive in Anchorage, I was feeling pretty sick. We had, just kind of drinking weird water, and we were filtering it, but not really sure what happened. Anyways, wasn't eating much, wasn't keeping much down. And so one day I was just kind of like, I'm done. Like, I'm really done camping. I want to stay in a cabin. And so we looked up on Airbnb to see if there's a cabin nearby. And there was. It's this little one that you can see up in the top right corner. And it looked like it was only 70 miles away, which is a big day for us, but usually it's doable. And so we set off. It was going well. Kind of dinner time came and went, and we were still kind of going because I was slow and steady. And Maury wanted to stop for dinner, and I was like, okay, like, you can catch me later. I'm going really slow. And so we got separated. First rule of things not to do. And anyways, the place where the cabin was supposed to be came and went, and it wasn't there. And so 70 miles passes, 75 miles passes, 80 miles, and there's still no cabin. And it started to rain, and the sun has set, and we were on the Glen Highway, so it started to get busier. And I was just really afraid, kind of getting really cold with that cold rain. It was, again, like, just slightly above freezing. And starting to feel a little desperate. And this truck pulls off in front of me, and a girl gets out and runs back through the rain. And she's just, are you okay? I'm like, no. Just kind of explain what happened. And so they load my bike up in the back of their trailer and put me in the car, turn around, go and find Maury, pick him up, and go and find our cabin and drop us off. But that was just one of the many times where people bailed us out or helped us on this trip, and we were really grateful for that.
Yeah. From Anchorage, we took a flight and we flew to Seattle to start the next section of our trip. This was 1,300 miles, and this was a really nice change from Alaska. It was beautiful weather down there, sunny, and we got to see a lot of friends and stay with family, and so this was a really fun section for us. The first section was Washington and Oregon. And one of the fun things about this section was we got to go see the Tillamook cheese factory. We're both into cheese in Tillamook, so this was really fun for us. And while we stopped there, we were just sitting out front, and a group of 5 or 6 other cyclists came up and joined us. And so we cycled with them for the next few days, and had fires like the photo on the lower left. Um, but yeah, this was a really great section for us.
So the next chunk was going through California, and we just followed the Highway 1 for the whole way. And so that took us through the redwoods, and it took us past Big Sur and over the Golden Gate Bridge into San Francisco, and then through lots of farmland. And a really beautiful section of the trip. And again, a ton of other bikers. But one thing that stands out was we were entering San Francisco, and we were supposed to stay with a Warm Showers host. And Warm Showers is an app for bikers where you see a map and you can text people in the city that live there, like, "Hi, can I stay there tonight?" And usually they say yes, sometimes they don't, it depends. But we had someone who was supposed to host us in San Francisco, and so we showed up to his house. He was at a nice row house kind of in downtown San Fran. And I knocked on his door. It was like 7 p.m. No one answers, and it's all dark. We're like, "Oh, what are we doing here?" Knock on it again, and no one answers. So we're kind of standing out there, trying to give him a call, figure out what's going on. And one of his neighbors walks out and kind of comes and chats to us and goes away to get some groceries. And when he comes back, he's like, you guys want to come inside? Like, we have dinner. And we're like, okay. So we go into his house and have a great time with him and his wife and their daughter. And then when his neighbor shows up, our host, we head off and go end up staying with him. But it was another good example of just people being a lot more open than we thought they would be, especially in a big city. We're just kind of random bikers beside the road, but another person that helped us out in a stop.
Yeah, and then before we knew it, we were near the border with Mexico. And so about 3 months after we'd finished the trip, we were about to enter Latin America for the rest of it. And this was a really scary moment for us. We really didn't know what we were going into. We just heard stories about entering Mexico, and didn't really have much experience with it. But one of the things we realized is that it was kind of our last chance to get Julia a nice bike before we got into Mexico. And her bike had some mechanical problems, and it was a little big for her. And so my parents came and visited us, and we decided to drive to Las Vegas to buy one since somebody was selling the exact same bike I had there. And we knew it'd be good touring for her since she'd ridden my bike a few times before. And so they thought, if this helps them out, then we'll do it. So we drove for all day to get to Las Vegas, and then picked it up. And a few hours later, we were driving back towards the border. And then the next morning, we cycled to the border with Mexico, which is our next section we'll tell you about.
So Baja, Mexico is really, really a highlight for us. If you can't visualize exactly where it is on the map, there's a big peninsula on the left side of Mexico there. And it's pretty unpopulated. There's a lot of desert. But what we loved about it is it's a really popular route for cyclists. So there's a ton of other bikers. And the unpopulated part means that it's really good camping. And the desert part means that it won't rain on you. So it's really just a combination of wonderful factors there. But this was almost 1,000 miles, about 900 miles, and took us 7 weeks. And as I mentioned, the big highlight was meeting friends. And so even right before the border, we had met some people, and we all crossed the border together, which was exciting because, strength in numbers. We were all kind of intimidated by, first time going out of the US on the bike, and went more or less well. And after we crossed in, we took off by ourselves, but almost every other day we would meet other bikers going through Baja. And this was just wonderful. We would meet them and cycle together for a couple days and camp together. And it's just, you really make friends fast when you spend 24/7 together. And it was such a highlight for us. And the picture on the top right is Maury's with a dog on a beach. And this was a fun one because there was a beach out outside of town called Mulahe on the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. And this dog just lived at that beach. It was a popular beach for tourists and bikers because you could stay there for free, just set up your camp. And this dog would come hang out and he'd go swimming with us when we went swimming, and he would sit by the fire with us when we sat by the fire. And yeah, really sweet dog. But lots of friends in all sorts of shapes and sizes.
Yeah, this was one of our favorite parts about this section, was getting to camp in the desert almost every night. It was super easy to camp since there weren't that many fences and there weren't that many people living there. And so a lot of the time we just pull our bicycles off the highway and, for half a mile or so, and then find a nice flat place to camp. And we also went swimming a lot. There's some beautiful beaches there. One of my favorite parts about camping in the desert, though, was these trees on the lower left, which is they're called bujum trees, and they're the largest succulent in the world. And they grow to maybe 20 or 25 meters tall, or feet tall. And yeah, they just look like a giant cone, or sometimes like a big tentacle sticking out of the ground. But there's a lot of unique, kind of bizarre cactus and plants like that in Baja, Mexico.
The final section of Baja was getting to La Paz. And we were in La Paz for a long time. We took a little detour to go say hi to Bill and Nancy down in Los Barriles. But we came back and we were waiting in La Paz. And the reason we were there for so long is because we wanted to hitch a ride on the sailboat instead of going across on the ferry. And so to do this, there's sort of a whisper chain of bikers who are doing this. And they're like, this is how you do it. And so you go down to the docks every day, and they have a radio hour, and you can call in and sort of state your case. We're two bikers, we're looking for a ride across. And then there's a coffee hour at about 10 a.m. at the marina, and you go sit down there and socialize with people and hope that someone likes you enough to take you on their boat. And I went and sat there for about 2 weeks, just kind of making conversation, eating the free cookies. And eventually one day we were sitting down there, and this guy walks up and says, "You guys are looking for a ride?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I can take you." Okay. His name was John. He was from California. And yeah, so he had about a 52-foot sailboat. And a couple days later, we went and loaded our bikes up on the sailboat, and he took us across. And it was a 3-day journey, 2 nights. And for me, it was really interesting. I've never been out on the open ocean, not from a fishing family. And it was so cool to get out day and night to see nothing but water in all directions. And it was really neat because we were on wheel watch one night, and you can see all the stars. But also there's these glowing Humboldt squid that'll pop out from underneath the boat. And so you kind of have, stars above and glowing shrimp or glowing squid below. And it was just really neat experience. And we were fortunate. They were really nice people to spend 3 days with. So
Yeah,
we're glad that we got that experience.
so after we got off the sailboat, this was near Puerto Vallarta on mainland Mexico. And right away, it was totally different environment. We woke up that morning and looked out from the sailboat, and you could see it looked like a jungle on the shore. And there's all these fancy boats and yachts and stuff. And and you could feel the humidity, which was just a total change from Baja. This section took us 3 months. I think it was the longest section for us. It just took forever. We would wonder if we'd ever finish Mexico sometimes. And part of that was the first half or so to get to Mexico City, we were mostly on dirt roads, way up in the mountains, which was really beautiful, but it was also really slow. So yeah, this section was a really beautiful section to get to Mexico City. They're really into their horses, and there's still like a really strong culture there. So one of the things I found really interesting was people still had their horses tied up outside of their house, and they'd just get on them and ride them wherever. And we'd bicycle by a lot of older men just riding their donkey around, and they'd kind of ride next to us for a while and try to make
to race us.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, try to race
Yeah,
us on
try
their
to
donkeys.
up the hills and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And life there is just really slow and quiet. You can see there's a little market in the lower left. We went through a lot of those markets. And yeah, it was nice to really get to meet a lot of locals.
So about the locals, that's something that, I mean, if you get one thing out of this presentation, it was kind of how many people that we met in likely and unlikely places that were just very welcoming. And Mexico really stood out for that specifically. There was one night where we were going down the highway. We were trying to pick up speed, kind of tired of being in Mexico. So this was near the end of Mexico. And couldn't find a place to stay. It was pretty unpopulated, but there was fences on either side of the road, and we don't really like to hop fences. So what we did is, we look up where the nearest soccer field is, because usually that's a pretty safe bet. And a couple miles away, so we bike there, and Mori goes and checks it out, thinks it looks good. But there's a guy that lives next door, and he kind of walks up to Mori like, "Hey, what you doing?" And Mori tells him that we're thinking about camping there. And he says, "Oh, you don't want to camp there? Like, that's where we put the cows during the night, And we're like, "Oh, okay. You can camp here next to my house." And sounds good. And so we go and set up our camp there. And they were having a little family dinner that night. And the picture in the lower right is of the family that we stayed with. That's his wife and his daughter and his grandson. And so you can kind of see their house behind it. A lot of the houses are made out of cinder blocks down there. But yeah, they were cooking over a fire, and they were eating outside. And one thing that was really fun is for dinner they were having a pot of really kind of spicy chicken soup, and then homemade tortillas, and a massive watermelon, and then like a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. And the women were making the tortillas, and they're like, "Oh, you know how to make these?" I'm like, "No." And so they're trying to teach me, and they make them by hand. They don't use a tortilla press. And so there's this like motion that you need to get going, where you like smash it with the heel of your hand and then spin it with 2 fingers. So it's like this, I don't know, I was not very good at it. And all of my tortillas were very lumpy, but it was really special experience to just be making tortillas with them that night, and eating dinner with them and hearing about their lives. And it was just kind of neat to kind of touch points coming from such different parts of the world.
One of the great things we also enjoyed about Mexico was there's a lot of historical ruins, like the Mayan pyramid on the left here. And there's also this church that we got to go see, or I got to go see. Julia was pretty sick that day.
I was sick a lot.
Yeah, so she was laying in bed, but I went to go see it, and showed her some photos. And this town had been completely covered by a lava flow at one point, but the church spire of the main church was left intact, and so it was just like the only thing rising out of this like black charred landscape covered with lava. And so that was quite interesting to go see. And then the other thing we got to see was the monarch butterfly migration, which was up in the mountains of Mexico. It was way up one mountainside, And we didn't get to get too close to them since they don't like people to disrupt their migration, but we could see the trees in the distance, and they were completely covered with monarch butterflies. Like it looked like there's like a bark that had kind of grown over the whole trees, and it was kind of shimmering and moving, and so that was really amazing to see.
The next chunk was Central America. So we entered through Belize. We went through the Yucatan for Mexico and then entered through Belize. And so we hit every country in Central America. And it's about 700 miles, and it took us 10 weeks. And it was really, really gorgeous part. It took us like a month before we could sleep well, just because it was so hot. It didn't drop below 90 degrees, I think, the entire time. And, for a while, I was just, we're going to fly over this. I can't handle it. But apparently you adjust. And so we did. So eventually we could sleep. But really, it was so interesting to be in the tropics. I'd never been well, no, I'd been in the tropics once, but it was, not for that amount of time. And we're pretty much without air conditioning. And it was just so interesting to be camping every night in that climate. And so the thing that stands out about Belize and Guatemala is, well, there's kind of two things. One is the big blue slow rivers, and you can see a little bit of it in the top left photo. There was all these just beautiful clear water big rivers that would kind of wind their way through Guatemala. And a lot of the families that would have river property would kind of, they'd have a lawn next to the river, and you could camp there for a couple dollars. And so we did that a couple times. But in the mountains of Guatemala, the indigenous culture is still very, very strong. And the women still dress sort of traditionally. And so you can see in the center photo, I'm at just a fruit stand buying mangoes or something. And the two ladies to the right of me are dressed pretty standard for the Guatemalan women in the mountains. And so they all wear those long, colorful skirts, very full skirts. And then they've got sort of a sheer crocheted or lace top. And then underneath it, they'll just have a tank top or a bra. And they all have these long black ponytails or braids. And it was really neat because for most of Mexico, people dressed really similar to how they do in the US. So Guatemala was kind of our first taste of seeing a culture that felt very different from ours. And it was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so after Guatemala, we went right into El Salvador, which was just a whole different feel from Guatemala. It was much drier. On the lower left was our first night in Guatemala or in El Salvador. And one of the fun things about El Salvador is they have a fun food that's called pupusas. And we'd heard about them before we got there, but I thought it was just like some sort of octopus thing, or we didn't really know what it was, and so we never tried it. But we met somebody on the road, and he invited us in to stay with him that night. Like originally he just offered us some water, but we got to talking, and he was like, do you need a place to stay for tonight? And do you want to camp or stay in our bedroom? And so we ended up staying in their spare bedroom, and he showed us how to eat the local food, which is pupusas. And they're like a tortilla, but it's kind of maybe the size and shape of a pancake, and it's filled with some sort of filler like cheese or meat. And then you eat it with shredded cabbage, and then also tomato, like a tomato sauce. Yeah. And so he showed us like, how you're supposed to eat them. And so that was really great, because for the rest of El Salvador, almost every day we'd buy pupusas, and they're like, I think like 40 or 50 cents a piece.
Yeah. And
so we had a lot of fun in El Salvador.
Yeah, they became a staple in our diet. You could buy them from a pupuseria, the name of a place that would sell pupusas. And they were really, really delicious.
Yeah.
But the last couple countries in Central America were Costa Rica and then Panama. And I do see why so many people go to Costa Rica now. It was really, really beautiful. We had really good camping there. Because for most of Central America, it's densely populated, so it's a lot more difficult to camp. So that's why we were staying with people for so often, because the end of the day would come, there's nowhere to camp, and so a lot of the grandmas are out sitting on their front porches at night. You just kind of walk up and, hi, can we camp in your yard? And no one ever told us no. So I'm really grateful for that. But Costa Rica is less populated and just tons of beautiful river spots at night. But both Costa Rica and Panama, something that was so fun for us was all the fresh fruit. There was a point where we went by, they were just growing pineapples, massive pineapple fields. And so you can see in the bottom left, in the bottom right photo, it's a pineapple stand. And they're selling all these pineapples. And then in the bottles is this fermented pineapple juice. We like to try new things. So we got some. We really didn't like it. Most of the food we liked, but the fermented pineapple juice was not for us. But one thing that was great fruit wise was the pink church up in the top left corner of the screen. There we go. We stayed there one night. It looked like it was about to rain, and so we went under their covered area. And they had a big mango tree nearby. And recently we'd been picking up mangoes off the side of the road because they were in season, and you'd stop, you'd be biking along and it's a mango. And we'd get off and, check it for bugs. And if there's no bugs, we'd stick it in our bag and carry on. And so that was a good night because we got to turn all the mangoes into mango curry. And one other food related thing was we were staying another night where we couldn't find somewhere to stay. So we asked someone, and very kind. And that's the Center family there. One of the ladies was also named Julia or Julia. And so that was exciting. But in their yard, they had a mango tree and they had a cacao tree, which is what you make chocolate from. And I was sort of showed, I was amazed. And she's like, oh, you don't know how these work? And no. And so in the top right photo, she's picking one of the cacao fruits. And what she did after that, she picked it and then she smashed it against the trunk of the tree and it pops open. And on the inside is there's all these seed pods kind of surrounded by this grayish fruit. And the fruit itself is really passion fruit tasting. Try some of that. But then when you bite into the seed, it tastes like really bitter chocolate. And it was just really interesting, especially coming from Alaska where, the natural fruit kind of ends at blueberries. So yeah. it was really exciting for us.
Okay, so after Panama, we flew to Bogota, Colombia, and this was like way up in the mountains of Colombia, I think over a mile high. And we were in Colombia and Ecuador for 9 weeks, the whole time way up in the Andes. So this was really beautiful and also totally different from Panama. So Colombia, as you can see on the left, is really beautiful, and there's a lot of flowers that they grow there in Colombia and Ecuador. And one of the fun things we had happen in Colombia was we were camping next to a lake, and we were about to go to bed, and some of the locals came up to us and were asking what we were up to, and we kind of just explained we were camping there and bicycling. And one of them had built this reed house in the middle here, which is like kind of a very local thing to there, was that the locals weaved like all sorts of things from these reeds. And so this guy, he makes a living from weaving these reeds together. And this was kind of his workshop. And so he had just piles of reed mats he'd weaved in there, and toys made of reeds, and even this house that he'd made of reeds. And so that was a really fun thing to to just kind of to sleep in for a night and get to meet him.
So yeah, as Maury mentioned, when we were in Colombia and Ecuador, we were pretty much in the Andes for the whole time, and the indigenous culture is still very strong in a lot of parts of kind of rural Colombia and Ecuador. And there was one night. It's very farmland, as you can see from the picture on the left. The hills are all patchwork, and sometimes it's amazing how steep they put their crops because some of those hills are not very rolly. They're very steep inclines, and the crops will go way up. But so yeah, there was a lot of camping, next to farmland, and one night we kind of went off the road and pulled up to this little spot where there was there's I think an old drum there and just some grass, and so we set up our camp, and this girl about my age kind of pops out. She'd been nearby, and she was a shepherdess. She had her little flock of sheep, and she was wearing very traditional clothes. She had this teal colored poncho on and a pink skirt and two long black braids. And for a lot of them, Spanish is their second language, and their first language is Quechua, or whatever the indigenous culture is in the specific area. And so she spoke Spanish with this really lilting accent. It was this la 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 la, so fun to listen to and really, really interesting to me. But yeah, there was also alpacas and llamas up there, and just really, it was really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So after Colombia, we passed into Ecuador. This was another really beautiful country. We're still up in the Andes Mountains. And one of the fun things about passing through a lot of these countries is there's just a lot of kids. Especially in Ecuador, we saw a lot of kids. And you can see on the lower right, Julie is chatting with a big group of kids. And this was one thing that we'd end up doing a lot. It was one person would have to wait with the bicycles, and another person would go shopping, go inside, or go to the fruit stand and bargain with the person and buy some fruit. And the other person would wait with the bicycles, and inevitably there'd be a little group of kids that would be running around, and they'd want to come check out the bikes, or come practice their English. I think right there they're asking her some words, like how to say
well,
hello.
they always knew thank you very much. It was like the one phrase that they knew. But then we had a lot of fun. I'd be like, how do you say socks? And they'd tell me, and then I'd tell them how you say socks, and it was just kind of a game that seemed to work everywhere. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really fun getting to meet some of the kids from those countries.
So the next section was Peru, and this was it was 1,800 miles, and took us 11 weeks. And it's desert. You can kind of tell from the map that section is all tan, and it's because it's desert the entire way. So yeah, but our friends came and visited us in Lima, and from Lima we all flew to Cusco, which is more in the mountains, to go to Machu Picchu together. And then they left, and we went back to Lima, picked up our bikes, and continued our journey. So it's kind of a nice break from the desert. But especially coming from rainforest Southeast Alaska, the desert was so interesting for us, and it grew on us, I think. But here's some desert photos, and a story that I think really highlights being in the desert was we decided to take a detour through there was a national park, and we're like, oh, that sounds fun, chance to get off the highway. And so we're riding towards it, and the wind's kind of picking up. We had a headwind for a lot of the coast of Peru. But we get to the entrance of the park, and there's a guard there, and he's like, I want you to know you're entering at your own risk. We're like, oh, okay, and we're kind of, do we want to turn around? And nah, we can handle it. And so we continue biking, and it's just desert. There's no plants, there's no cacti, there's no lizards. It's like sand and rocks. And the road started out paved, and then it kind of turned to gravel. And then eventually it just turned into tire tracks in the sand. And so the picture in the bottom left I'm standing in the road there. You can see the 2 tire tracks, and that's it. That night, we set up our tent. Well, this is a nice thing about the desert is you can just camp anywhere, because it's all flat and there's no one around. So we set up our camp, but the wind was so strong that when I was making dinner over our campfire, the lid would blow off the pot and it would roll several hundred yards, and I'd go sprinting after it and I'd grab it. And so that night we just set up the tent as quick as we could, and we just ate just plain rice for dinner. I think we had a little bit of pesto to throw on top, just huddled in our tent because it was so strong. But the next morning it cooled off, or wind slowed down a little bit, and we finished the detour through the national park, and we were pretty happy to get back to the highway.
So this is that detour we mentioned, going with our friends to Cusco and Machu Picchu. This was a really fun section, and it's just a totally different culture in the mountains of Peru versus on the coast. So we took a flight to Cusco, and then we saw some ruins there, and also in at Machu Picchu. And we wanted to go see Machu Picchu, but we weren't really sure what to expect. We'd heard a lot of stories like how beautiful it was, but we'd also heard it was like super touristy, and is a little expensive. We hadn't done too many touristy things like this because we had a budget, and so but we decided this was worth it to go see, and we were really glad we did. On the left you can see a photo of part of it, and it's just built on these like incredibly steep mountains like that one in the back, and they're just totally surrounding the city, and it's way up in the mountains. And so we took the allotted 2 hours to walk through it, and we were really glad we saw it. It was just really incredible to see what people had made up there, several hundred years ago.
It lives up to the hype for sure.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. Yeah. So the next section we went with our friends to the jungle. The Amazon rainforest kind of edges into Peru just a little bit. So like Peru's a good country if you want to see several different climates, because you can get the desert, and then you can get kind of the Andean mountains, and then you can get jungle. And so we went, to see part of the Amazon. And the picture in the middle, of the rowboats, we took a little tour around this massive lake, and I just remember, it was like noon, and it was well over 100 degrees, I think, out there on the water. We're rowing, it's really hot, but the birds were incredible. We got to see so many beautiful birds, just really beautiful plumage and so many colors. And there was also some Amazon River otters that were sleeping on a log, and they're a lot bigger than the marine otters, which is is an interesting surprise for us. We also took a night walk through the jungle and got to see this creepy tarantula, kind of cute. But this guy was fun because when we went out and back on the same trail, and he was sleeping on this leaf. And when we came back, he was still sleeping on the leaf. So I don't know, having a good nap or something. But yeah, it was neat to take an excursion into the jungle before heading back into the desert.
Yeah. This is our last of the 8 sections, Chile and Argentina. This was 3,500 miles, and we were going pretty fast through most of it. And we actually took a ferry for a section and also a bus. We were really excited to get done, but this was our last 2 months of the trip. So the first third was in the Atacama Desert, which it's the driest desert in the world, and it's super dry. And so here we got to see a lot of fun stuff. We got to see the Nazca lines, which are right before the border in Peru. And then also there's a lot of copper mines and mining. So in the upper left, you can see there's a rock I found on the side of the road. And we've found several of these just the ground was so rich with minerals you could just pick up these rocks and so it was really beautiful. But one of the things we discovered about the desert was even though it's all desert, it really changes, even by the mile. Some sections would be really green because of all the copper in the rocks. And then other sections would have these streaks of like black running through the mountains, like the photo in the upper right, or like these little anemone like cactuses in the lower right. So the desert, even though it was a lot of desert, it was still really interesting to go through.
Yeah, the next chunk after the desert was the Carretera Austral, and this just means the Southern Highway. And so this is the southernmost highway on Chile, and it feels like coming home a little bit. It looks a lot like Southeast Alaska. There's lupins, there's fjords, there's snow-covered mountains. It's really, the water is that kind of gorgeous teal color that we get in Southeast. And so it was wonderful. It was so refreshing. Felt like we were home, but everything was in Spanish. And one fun thing there was, well, the lupins are yellow, so that was exciting for us. There's yellow lupins, but then also on the Carretera Austral, a lot of it is it's very active, volcanically.
Geothermal. Yeah.
Geothermal. And so there's a lot of hot springs. And so people, there's, a lot of them were kind of more expensive. Chile has a very strong economy, which means that things are more expensive. And so there's a lot of hot springs, but we didn't really want to pay $30 a person to go. So we're like, oh, guess we won't go. But someone had marked on a mapping app that we had that there was a puddle beside the road there was a natural hot springs. And so that's what I'm sitting in this top left photo. If the camera was turned just slightly, you would see the gravel road. It was really neat to be in kind of such a natural hot springs as that, like not built up at all. Like, you could kind of only tell it's there because the water was steaming. But yeah, we really enjoyed the Carretera Austral. It was gorgeous, really rainy for a chunk of time, just like Southeast. But when it dried out and the sun came up, it's totally beautiful. And lots of other bikers again, which was really exciting for us because um, since Baja in Mexico, we didn't really meet cyclists with any regularity, be maybe once a month. Everyone just gets so spread out and they're less popular routes. But once we got here, people started showing up again. And so it was nice to be more social.
Hey, this was our last country, Argentina. We were only in Argentina for maybe 2 weeks, but it was a really fun change from the Carretera Austral. Um, there's these kind of fields called pampas in Argentina, which are these grasslands. And they had some fun animals there. Like there's this animal in the middle called the guanaco, which is the ancestor to the llama. And then we also got to see penguins on Magdalena Island, which is a penguin colony. And so there's 160,000 penguins that breed every year on that island. And so we took a tour. You get to walk across the island for an hour. And it was really fun to see there'd be penguins just kind of waddling across the path, and we'd have to wait for a few minutes while they kind of stumbled around. And
They would like trip and fall over half the time.
They'd fall over a lot, but
They're really cute.
They're pretty fun to watch.
Yeah.
And then about a week later, we arrived in Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city. And that was really great. But one of the memorable things about ending the trip was it was so windy. Actually, like the last few hours to get to the airport were were some of the hardest of our trip. We got blown over just trying to get over to the airport. We both fell off our bikes, and so we had to walk for maybe a mile and a half to get to the airport.
Pushing into the wind. Yeah.
And so yeah, it was quite interesting to finish there.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's our trip. In total, it was about 12,000 miles, and it took us 16 months. We started August 13th of 2022, and we ended December 21st, like a month ago and some change. And it's 14 countries total. Some things that we learned or that evolved was our setups, what we were carrying on our bikes really changed. So you can see in the top left photo compared to the top right photo, that is my setup at the very beginning of the trip versus at the very end of the trip. And I'm carrying about 60 pounds less worth of just stuff by the end of the trip. We just really figured out what we did and did not need. But we did add a guitar. That's what the green thing is on the back in the second photo. So just kind of, learning what we wanted and what we didn't want. And it was really nice to be able to pare down our stuff so much that, we kind of have one t-shirt and one long sleeve, and yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a different change of attitude too. In the beginning, we were kind of like, oh, we're going to be living on our bikes for 2 years, so we're going to bring everything we think we'd want for 2 years. But it's kind of more about like, if you don't use it for 2 weeks, then you don't want to carry it. So that was a big change of attitude. Was just kind of like, well, if we're not using this for maybe more than 2 weeks, let's just get rid of it.
But an example of something that we did not use for 2 weeks, and we carried it for like, I don't know, a year and some, and then finally used it at the end, is in the bottom right photo. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that was a spare spoke that we bought in California, and it's made of Kevlar. It's just a Kevlar rope. And some lady at a bike shop said, we'd need this if we're going for a year.
She was in San Francisco. That's how far back this was. There was a lady in San Francisco. It's right there.
Yeah, and then about a week before we finished the trip, one of Julia's spokes broke, and I was really glad we had it because there was no bike shop around for a while.
Yeah, we were on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere.
So yeah, but really just in general, we learned a lot about fixing our bikes. And on the left is Julia's back rack after we'd fixed it on the Dalton Highway. So that was another thing we learned a lot about, was just how to fix our bikes and just kind of how to make do with things and fix them and make it work.
Yeah. But that's pretty much the end of our presentation. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, we are happy to answer them now. Make this full.
So
how should we do this?
Let's see. Maybe Matt, if you can turn the video back on, maybe, and
yeah, I'm here. I think there's a little hand raise if people want to raise their hands, or anybody just wants to unmute and ask a question, that's fine too. Does anybody have any questions for Julia and Mori?
Okay, I see Bridget raised her hand, so I'll
click the Ask Tony.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Oh, it's so lovely to hear your story and to see a lot of wonderful Haynes people on here. I'm curious if you felt unsafe, or if you were challenged, if your safety was challenged in any way in this entire visit.
So, for the most part, I think we were remarkably lucky. No one ever stole anything from us. No one ever even threatened to steal anything from us. There was totally nights where we felt a little unsafe, and kind of consistently around 5 p.m., I would get kind of nervous because I was hungry and I was tired and we didn't know where we were going to stay. And, so it was like daily, like, where are we going to go? And sometimes you end up, in a sketchy part of town. We had a bad habit of underestimating the amount of time it takes to enter a city. So I think we originally thought, it'll take us 3 hours to get into Mexico City. It's only 30 miles, and it actually takes you 6 hours. So for that example, we thought we'd get to the apartment we were staying at in Mexico City at 6 p.m. And instead 10 p.m. came around and we still weren't there. And so there was lots of moments like that where we were just kind of afraid, and it was kind of sketchy, and it just we were just lucky, really. It worked out. Yeah, we were really fortunate.
Wow,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Dennis and Deborah, I saw you guys had your hand up too. If you can unmute.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Hey, you guys, really, what an incredible journey. Thank you so much. Great pictures. I want to hear if either one of you, hit a point when you really wanted to go home. I mean, it's a long time and it's impressive, but it could not, how was that?
Yeah.
You want to talk about it first?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. We both hit points like that at different points on the trip.
Multiple times.
So, yeah, multiple times. But I think it's lucky we both didn't hit it at once, because
Yeah.
would have ended the trip for sure. But for me, it was that last section in Chile. Julia had gone back to Alaska twice during the trip, and so before we ended it, she'd only had 6 months or something. But for me, it had been a year and a half or close to it since I'd been home. And so I was really ready to be done. And so that was partly why we went pretty fast at the end there. We were doing 70, 80-mile days for 5, 6 days a week.
Yeah. I mean, on the other end, there was a day, maybe 4 days from the very start of the trip in Prudhoe Bay, where I was sure that we were going to quit when we got to Fairbanks. I'm like, this is terrible. No, like really, like my feet have been wet for 5 days straight. Like there's bear tracks by our tent. Like it was really, but the nice thing is, you can't really quit until you get to a city where you could fly back. And by the time you get to a city, you're staying in a house again and you're well fed and you're like, oh, it wasn't so bad.
Fun stories.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we were, pleasantly delusional every time we got to a place where we could quit. So.
Well, that is great. I'm sure that you got to know each other.
Yeah.
I mean,
we did.
Yeah. So very beautiful presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
You enjoyed it.
Okay, let's see. The next one I see is Julia's iPad. Is somebody there?
Hey, Maury. Yeah, this is Sean Asquith and Julia Hines here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Maury. Congratulations on your trip. Sounds like an epic trip. I'm glad I got to see your presentation, and thanks for that. Anyway, one question I had was how you guys figured out your routes. I'm pretty, the only touring I've done is in the States, and I like to go with the adventure cycling and everything's all planned out. But obviously, like, you guys must have had to do some figuring out yourselves.
Yeah, we did for sure.
We didn't plan that much.
Yeah.
We had a vague idea of like wanting to kind of stay to the west coast of both continents. But as far as daily routes went, we had a mapping app on our phone and we'd scroll in and that looks like a fun road, and we'd take it and, oh, it's too hilly, let's go back to the highway. So we get back to the highway and I'm tired of the highway, let's take another dirt road. So we'd find another dirt road, and it was like that a lot. Just kind of, yeah.
And so for the most part, the traffic worked out okay mostly. And
sometimes we made a bad decision for sure. Like like going out of some big cities like Bogota, Colombia. It was pretty busy, but
Yeah.
and it really depended on the area too. Like the first half of Mexico on the mainland, we followed a route that somebody had suggested that was on I think it's like ride with GPS, and so we followed that. And then yeah, sometimes people would suggest a route. We'd meet other cyclists, and they'd say, "Oh, I've heard this route is good." Or sometimes there's a place we wanted to go see, and so we'd figure out a route. But yeah, it really depended, and we kind of winged it for a lot of it. So I'm not sure we're the best people to talk about detailed.
All right, let's bring that down.
Recommendations.
So one other quick question was, especially like in Baja and other desert places, it just seems like I'd be worried about water, and
Yeah.
you must have had to do some planning and carrying a lot of extra water maybe sometimes, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
We were
did.
weighed down. We had a 10-liter water bag, and then we had about another 8 liters in our water bottles. So at one point we could carry up to 18 liters of water.
Which we
Wow.
did.
That
Yeah.
it was good because Maury's gluten-free, and so he can't eat a lot of the food.
Mhm.
So we made a lot of beans and rice, from dry. So like it's a lot of water. So we had to carry a lot of water. But
All right.
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
Great
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the next hand up is Rebecca, and it looks like, is that Joseph there? Yeah.
Hi, Joseph.
It's the Fontenot's and Joseph Rossman.
Oh, hello.
Oh,
Hi guys. I have a short practical question and then a more open-ended one. Again, to repeat what everyone else is saying, thanks for doing this. It's really cool to see what your adventure was like, or just get a taste of it. And in fact, we had hoped to have had you for Thanksgiving in Mulegé. Things didn't quite line up. We got Joseph and Sarah, but you were off grid somewhere,
So
out of
close.
contact. I don't think you were very far north of us, but we
That was
almost
like-
saw you.
Like
Yeah, that would've
60
been
miles
fun.
or something.
Yeah. So the practical question is, when you flew Lima to Cusco and left your bikes, how do you safely leave your bikes?
well,
Where did you leave them?
we just met so many nice people, but we had found, oh gosh, we needed to replace something. What were we replacing on the bikes?
Oh,
The
I
whole
mean,
hub.
yeah, like the whole drivetrain was slipped. Like we needed to replace the rear cassette and the chain rings, and the yeah, just kind of all the gears.
Yeah. And Mori had found a local bike mechanic who just does it out of his house. And so we went there and met him, and he seemed nice. We're like, can we just leave our bikes with you for a week?
Okay.
He's like, sure. And everything
Yeah.
was still there when we got back. Really nice
Yeah,
guy.
why
Paid him
not say sure, right? If you never came back, you had 2 new bikes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we didn't really have
All right.
that.
Then the more open
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. The more open-ended question is, having done this, would you consider tackling another continent and another epic journey someday later down the road?
yeah, I think so. I need like 3 years of like not being homeless though. Like
3 years of dry feet.
yeah, like
Yeah.
regularly shower and have my own kitchen where I know where all the spices are. Just little things, that really tire over time.
But yeah, we do have a lot of ideas. We met a lot of people, cool people like who'd bicycled all the continents, and one of the guys we met was walking all of South America. And so that was we're kind of talking about like maybe our next trip we should walk a country or walk somewhere. So
but this isn't a commitment.
Yeah,
we're just dreaming.
But yeah, we
Make it harder. Yeah, it looked like it was too easy.
yeah, exactly. You just got to make it harder. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
So Anya, we see your hand up too.
Hello.
Hi, greetings from Duluth. You're down.
My old home.
I'm so excited you moved there because now I'll have new Duluth friends when I go visit. And yeah, excited to see you in a couple weeks, hopefully.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow, this was such a great presentation, and now I have like serious regrets not meeting up with you somewhere. It would have been amazing if my little January trip last year if you had been a little further along, or we would have
Yeah.
coordinated.
I mean, it's hard. We're a moving target, so we're
Yeah.
hard to get, so.
Yeah.
Totally. I guess my question was if you had like what like travel resources did you use the most when like planning or figuring out sites to see, or if you had like an app or used books or
Just one, which is so good. If you're traveling by road, it's called Overlander. So it's a little I and then Overlander. It's so good. It depends on
Yeah,
the area
that's super
and how popular it is, but that's how we found a decent number of our camping spots, and that's how we found water in the desert. To answer the earlier question, Baja's really popular traveling place, so people will mark where there's water, and so we look on there and, oh, there's water in 100 miles, so we need to carry this much.
Yeah, and sometimes
Um,
even the water spot was just like a guy that lived in a little shack on the side of the road selling bottles of water for like $4 each.
I know he's got a monopoly on
But,
it. It's really,
like that, you really
Yeah.
needed to know that info. So
Yeah.
Overlander was really great.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of things on there. So yeah,
Um,
free camp spots, paid camp spots. They tell you, and the nice thing is all the reviews are very honest. So you kind of actually know what to expect. Like, people aren't going to talk it up if it's not good. So there's a really
wow,
good.
I've never heard of it, so that's a
Yeah.
And did you have pretty good success with warm showers?
We did in the US. In the West Coast, we really used it a lot. It was really great. But then in Mexico, less. In the big cities, there's usually one or two people per big city, but they're usually swamped because every warm showers person is texting them. So there was a couple, like in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, we were able to stay with someone, and she was a great lady. It was a wonderful experience. But a lot of those people have someone staying with them like every couple of days because they're the only host. So it's worth a try, but it's not something to depend on.
Yeah.
Outside
Yeah.
of the US.
I
Yeah.
tried to use it a couple times and just like found myself messaging so many people and like
Yeah.
not back or being like, oh, I can't do it. And then I was like, wow, this is like so much work. And this was like planning ahead of time, not doing it
Yeah.
a lot.
We did also use couch surfing when we really needed to stay somewhere. So like when we got off the plane in Colombia and we're wanting to stay somewhere in Bogota, we stayed with a couch surfing host there. We would use both apps, try to
Yeah.
find someone free
And
to
I
stay
will
with.
say, yeah, some areas couch surfing worked better. In some places, yeah, the warm showers worked better, and it really depended. One thing with couch surfing was I think we messaged like 20 people before we got our first host, because they really depend on reviews. So especially with couch surfing, it can be really hard to get your first person to stay with, but after that, it's a lot easier.
I see.
But I could leave you a review, so just let me know. Then you'd have it in. Yeah.
Nice. And
Yeah.
how did you do laundry?
Oh, well, so we did laundry by hand a lot.
Oh, wow.
We wore the same shirts for the entire trip, and they're that like stretchy sun protection material. But the problem is, if you wash them by hand, they're too full of water and they stretch and they stretch and they stretch. And like they stretched till they were see-through. Like you could see Maury's whole back. So I chucked it, but he kept wearing it. Like, but yeah, a lot of laundry by hand. A lot of laundry by hand. When there was a laundromat, we'd take it there. Started to really appreciate like a dryer was a lovely thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
just really depended.
Yeah, we tried to do it at least once a week. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Is
It
it?
was pretty stinky.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I'll ask you more questions when I see you. I'll let other people.
That's good.
Leonie, I see you have your hand up too.
Hi. How are you? I just quickly, we met her in a hostel in Colombia. So
Yeah, it's so nice to hear the rest of your trip.
oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
I thought we would have met each other again in Chile, but no.
Yeah.
But no, what what I was wondering is just now with the benefit of hindsight, is there any piece of advice that you would have given yourself at the beginning of your trip?
That's a good question.
Hmm.
I guess I wish I'd had less fear at the beginning of the trip. I was just really afraid of going outside of the US. I was afraid of, scary people and scary places. And I think that's why it just made such a big impression on us that most people want to help. Like there's bad actors out there, but they're a small percentage of the population. And, most of the time, if you throw yourself at the mercy of strangers, they're willing to help, because most people just want to go to work and feed their family and, eat good food. So
Yeah.
I wish I'd had less fear. Yeah. You have anything?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think we learned, like we mentioned, a lot about not bringing our whole life with us
Yeah.
and how to just kind of have a more efficient setup. So we kind of shifted to like a more bike packing setup at the end where we had thick tires and bags that were kind of more securely strapped to our bikes. And so that made it a lot nicer to ride on those roads. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. I'll have to keep thinking on it though, because it's a good reflective question. Yeah.
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 Yeah, well, you've definitely given my partner and I something to think about. We're currently
Yeah.
in Melbourne, in Australia,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
thinking about maybe doing New Zealand, cycling New Zealand first, and then
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that looks like a beautiful route.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
read
heard
some
it's
blogs
beautiful.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
thanks
Julie.
very much for sharing
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, for
yeah, thanks
sure.
for calling in.
that. Yeah,
Julia
no
and
problem.
Sean, I see you have a hand up again too. We'll just keep going back in in order. Yeah.
Let's see, you're gonna click ask to unmute. No.
Any other questions or those hands that are still up?
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to you, Sean, if you guys come back.
Joseph.
Joseph, did you have another question?
Yeah. So we don't tend to learn a whole lot like when we're satisfied, when everything's good. And we do tend to learn when we're uncomfortable. So I'm kind of interested what you learned from like the biggest, longest suffer fest and just like the biggest suck of the trip. Like what'd you learn about yourself or other things?
I think that's the thing. Like we didn't have prolonged. We definitely had down points, but
Yeah,
they were
there's some
rarely
pretty rough spots.
prolonged. Like as I said, every day from like 5 to 7 p.m., I was like really grumpy because I was hungry and I was tired and I was really afraid. Like, where are we gonna sleep tonight? I don't know. I didn't know last night and I don't know tomorrow, and it's tough, So like that was just kind of learning that we just need to I'm not mad at you. I'm just hungry and I'm scared. Yeah, just like very articulating what we're feeling and why we're feeling it was big.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think I do think we just almost every night or every few nights we had a pretty stressful night. So there's a lot of stress going on. But one of the things, I mean, I think I learned from it was like there's a recent interview with Steve-O from Jackass, and he
Yeah.
about like how he would get himself to do scary stuff, and he said he would just count from 3, 2, 1 and then just do it like no matter what he was thinking. And I think that kind of thinking would kind of help like when we got in a tough situation. It's like you can't think about it, you just have to do it because the sun's going down and we don't have a place to stay and we don't have any water, so we just need to go ask this random farmer if we can camp next to their cows or whatever. and or we need to push on 10 more miles to the next town.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of it wasn't really a choice. It's like we can't camp here. We can't, we don't have any more water. We don't have whatever. Like, we have to go talk to that person. We have to go do this scary thing. And so I don't know, it was just knowing that we must, just kind of very motivating.
Very motivating.
But I don't know. Well, honestly, Alaska was the hardest section of the trip for both of us. Like, it really was. Those 2 weeks, no, that month was just like, I think neither of us knew what we were doing. It was really cold and really wet. And I just, like, I'd never been out in the wilderness like that. And there's just some memories from those first couple of days of like laying in my tent. And there's nothing around and no one around for like hundreds of miles, and I'm just like, geez, if I died out here, like, it'd be at least a couple of days before anyone realized, like, because we're kind of off hidden in the bushes, like, who's gonna find our tent? It wouldn't, but so Alaska was really hard. Yeah,
it was tough. Alex, I see you have your hand up too.
Yeah, hey guys.
Hey.
I'm so glad that you shared this with us. I have two questions for you. The first, like Mark and Becky asked earlier, is super practical. I'm curious what bikes you were riding. What make and model bike got you all the way down there?
Sure, yeah, I'll talk about it. We both had REI co-op bikes actually for most of the trip.
they're really good.
Yeah, we didn't see anybody else on them. It's called an ADV 3.1. It's like their gravel touring bike. And it was nice because it's like kind of a lower cost gravel bike, but they really did well. And actually Julia started with the Kona Sutra,
which is like a higher end
really
one.
Highly recommended, but
I'm not into it. We met some people that really love their Konas, but it didn't work for me. So the cheaper REI bike was really a good fit.
Yeah,
for both
and we had more mechanical problems with the Kona Sutra than the REI bikes. So yeah, that was the bike we used.
It's really nice to have something a little bit more simple, because then you know how to fix it, because like everything's gonna break eventually. Like, you can't really get something that's not gonna break. So you just want to make sure you know how to fix it.
The Kona Sutra had hydraulic brakes and
a little complicated for us.
Some other stuff. Yeah, it was a little bit more complicated. So yeah, I think having a bike that's nice but not too complicated is really key.
Yeah. But yeah, shout out to the REI co-op bikes.
Yeah,
that's awesome. But yeah, I think Kona, they market that Kona Sutra as like their world tour.
I know. I'm like,
it's like the bike for them.
Not here to throw some shade, but
no, that's great. You guys should be brand ambassadors for REI.
Yeah. I'll say one other thing about the REI bikes was like the Sutra was a little more stretched out, and so it seemed
it's more aerodynamic, but it's uncomfortable for all day because you're really leaned forward.
Tiring. So I think that's one tip I would give about like a touring bike. If it has a shorter frame, it was more comfortable for us to travel for a long time on.
Nice. Yeah. Well, the other question I had for you guys was, I've been like, Mori, I know you because we were together in school.
Yeah.
And, so the last year and a half, I've been talking to students, and I'm like, you guys won't believe this badass thing Mori's doing. And I'm curious, you guys, you're sharing your story this way. You obviously took a ton of pictures. You documented your travels on Instagram. I'm curious, between the two of you, how else you work to kind of ingrain this in your memory or capture it for yourself so you can look back at it later?
Yeah,
it's a good question.
I mean,
one thing that we did do throughout the trip is we took a lot of videos after something would happen, just explaining it to ourselves. I don't really think we posted them, but just so that a couple of years later, if we were feeling nostalgic, we could go back and watch a video, and then you're in the moment. You're like, oh yeah, we just saw that bear or whatever. And So
Yeah.
that's been nice because every now and then, you know, you're scrolling through your photos and oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm just I
Uh,
don't know, I was gonna make a scrapbook for us and try to write down a lot of our stories. And
Yeah.
both of us kept journals the entire
We
trip.
both kept journals
So
every night. So
that
that'll
helps.
be fun too to go back and see kind of how they're different from both of us because we always write kind of different perspectives. So yeah, we did several methods of writing things down and videoing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, guys. It was a real treat to be able to hear some more about it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah,
yeah,
thanks for coming.
Yeah, nice seeing you.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, we got any more questions?
yeah.
Good.
Okay,
Mori
sweet.
and Julia, I just want to thank you again. This was just such a great presentation, such a cool trip. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us.
Yeah, thanks for having
sure.
us.
All
And
right,
we
come
were
back to
really
Haynes real
thankful.
soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're really thankful for the motivation the presentation gave us. Otherwise, we would not have organized our photos. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Put a little fire under you. That's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Yeah.
I got to do this in 2 days. You know.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, can't wait to have you back. Visit Haynes sometime.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah, we'll
you.
be there. Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Good night.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye,
thanks
guys.
for joining.
All right. I'm turning her off.